Hey friends, thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on this comparative test of homemade black powder. And as the title is letting everybody be aware of, it's mesquite blended with peanut shell versus mesquite blended with pistachio shell. I'm just going to recap a few things and before I actually get out to the shooting range. But in case anybody's interested, this is 80 grains by weight. It occupies, I'm guessing, about 83 grains by volume. And it's a little bit lighter volume-wise than the mesquite blended with pistachio shell. 80 grains by weight occupies about maybe 82. So they're comparatively close. And once again, you know, these numbers really only mean something to me. But I kind of want to recap a few things. Get something out of the way. I've got the 4 tomahawk heads finished for the Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous 2026, and if you plan on attending, these are supposed to be given away as first place prizes for the aggregate of knife and hawk. So you've got that to look forward to if you are planning on attending that Mountain Man Rendezvous. Okay, and you can go online, type in Santa Fe Trail Rendezvous, and you can get the date and the map and everything how to get there. I want to mention a few more things from Brett's book, like fire and powder. Okay, now this concerns blending your gunpowder with either brass or lead media. Okay, this comment is found on page 69. I've got it highlighted because my comparative test burning black powder milled with brass versus the lead media that I use, which is 60-40. For every 60 pounds of lead, there's 40 pounds of tin, so it's extremely hard. But from what I've been able to observe and test, the only difference between milling with lead and brass is that with brass, the smoke is much more bluer. The smoke left behind doesn't look near as dirty. Let me show you. 30 grains of the black powder that I made with century plant as a single source charcoal milled with brass media. I'll flip it over and do the same thing with the homemade black powder with century plant as the single source charcoal milled with my lead tin media. Alright, before we do the comparison, I'm going to do the same test only on blocks of wood, so you can understand what we're really looking at when you're trying to determine if your gunpowder is really clean or dirty. This is the century plant milled with brass. There's the two burns side by side. The pieces of particles left behind, they're identical in size, identical in shape. The only difference in these two burns is the color of the smoke. That's the only difference. But because one's blue, people tend to think, oh, it's cleaner because it's blue instead of darker. Okay? But you look at those pieces, they're identical, okay, throughout the entire burn. The only difference is the color of the smoke. Now, you may ask why I did the burn on the wood block. Well, unlike the glass, the wood block does not capture the smoke, unless you're using Swiss or something that has graphite in it. Make that distinction, okay? So this was the burn, the green dot with the powder that was milled with the brass. Okay, you can look at that. And then this was the burn, 30 grains, powder milled with the lead. There's not any difference in it, guys. So honestly, whether you mill your gunpowder with brass or the lead tin media that I'm doing, there's really no difference in those burns, except for the color of the smoke. Now let me read something from Brett's book on page 69. Second paragraph, about halfway down. I've got it highlighted. Well, in fact, I'll just read down to that part. For milling the binary mixtures, I have used brass, bronze, and steel media. I still feel safer using the brass, as I do have some concerns about small bits of steel being broken away from the steel media, which could end up in the mixture and potentially cause a spark when milling the combined charge. However, the brass wears faster and is much more expensive than steel media. Obviously, any media material that wears off during the milling process is added to the mixture and represents an impurity. It is frustrating to have gone to lengths to achieve an absolute purity of ingredients, only to poison the composition with foreign matter from the milling media. From my observations, there is virtually no wear visible on the steel media after long duration of milling, while wear on brass bronze media becomes apparent after a few loads. Who are you going to believe? Some guy on YouTube or some guy that's a published author? Let's put this to bed, okay? The only difference is the color of the smoke, and if you're using brass, like Brett mentions, it wears faster. And if it's wearing off, you're contaminating your gunpowder. End of discussion. That's it. There's virtually no difference. Brass media milling, lead media milling. The only difference between the block and the glass is the wood block does not capture the smoke unless, once again, just to reiterate, unless you're using something with graphite in it. There's no difference. Okay, now, moving on to another point. On page 95, at this point, at Waltham Abbey, the powder was stoved or heated in drying rooms at 130 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat provided by steam for at least 18 hours. Okay, this drove off all moisture from the powder, which had been present in the wet saltpeter used from the very start of the process, and occasionally supplemented by liquoring on the incorporating mill at the process. Okay, now how you decide to dry your gunpowder, totally up to you. Once again, you are making an explosive. And I've mentioned this before on this channel. You take every precaution you deem necessary to ensure the utmost safety. Now for me, when I put my pucks on the dashboard of my pickup truck and shoot it with my temperature gauge, I can get up to 148 to 150, sometimes 158 this time of year during the winter months, early spring. During the summer months, I've been able to get my pucks up to 165, 167 degrees. I leave them on the dashboard of my truck for probably 3 hours at the very minimum, and then I come in and break them up because I have figured out, or I have found it easier to break the pucks up when they're still warm, as opposed to, you know, drying them out for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, 7 days. I have found that hitting them with my hammer, that they break up easier when they're warm as opposed to when they're at room temperature. Now, once I get that done, I grind it all up to the size that I'm looking for, and then I put that back on the dashboard of my truck for another couple of hours to ensure that they're absolutely, positively dry. But I'll do me, you do you. I know that some like to use one of those small ovens at 100, 110 degrees for a couple hours. You do you, I'll do me. And who knows, maybe one of these days I might have to buy a new pickup truck because I blew the windows up. But you have to remember, I'm not in an environment that's creating a magnifying type lens. Okay, so a windshield is not a magnifying. Shit happens, I'm not denying that, but for the most part, and that's why I crack my windows down a little bit, just in case something does happen, that energy has an escape route. So, but once again, you take every precaution that you deem necessary to ensure your safety in the process of making homemade black powder. Now, I want to move on to the third point, just simply because it's not the 76-15-11 formula that creates good gunpowder. It's not the 77-13-10 that creates good gunpowder. It's not the 75-15-10 that creates good gunpowder. It's your charcoal source and the amount of gases that that charcoal source can produce in a given measurement. That's what creates fast burning gunpowder. Again, page 36. Listed at the very top, dogwood, but Brett decides to call alder buckthorn dogwood. Okay? So this is what he's got. Proportions of gas in cubic inches. Buckthorn alder, 80 to 84. Willow, which is the Pacific willow, is 76 to 78. Your regular alders, 74 to 73. Filibert and fir, chestnut from 72 to 66. Elm down to 62. Oak 61 to 63 cubic inches of gas in a burn environment. Oak 54 to 56. So you can see that not all charcoal sources are producing the gas required to project that, to propel that projectile at a high velocity. Unless you're using buckthorn alder, which produces the most amount of gas in a given burn. So it's not 77-13-10, it's not 76-15-11, it's none of that. It's the charcoal that you choose, okay? Now, having been a blacksmith for the vast majority of my life, I understand that certain woods produce hotter coals. And I learned a long time ago that mesquite produced hot gas for forging with a relatively low emission of ash. Just like sycamore. That's why I was anxious to try sycamore. Okay? Now, when it comes to mesquite, there are different varieties of mesquite. Now, what I'm testing here is the original batch of mesquite that I got when I went down to my friend's Williams home and shot with that black powder shooting club. Okay, so this is what I'm testing, the original batch. Now, I've since got some more since then, different sources, but it's all honey mesquite, and I've gotten rid of all of the sapwood, and I'm only using heartwood, okay? Now, so this is what I'm using, but I'm blending it with a little lighter charcoal source to see if I can't clean it up a little bit. But having known that mesquite is a good wood for forging, this is what I was anxious to get my hands on. And I know in a previous video I made a comment about maybe testing it with buckthorn alder. But you know what? Thinking about what I've done in the past, I've taken 100 grams of Swiss, milled away all of the heavy graphite glazing and gotten right back down to the pure gunpowder. And I still defeated that. Because Swiss uses all the buckthorn as a single source gunpowder and then coat it with graphite. So for me, that's done, okay? That's really done. I've said before that I believe mesquite is checkmate, okay? Because it's producing in an 80 grain burn, same gun, same weight, same time of day, same chronograph. Nothing has changed in that perspective. And now I'm getting gunpowder with an 80 grain by weight charge pushing 2,000 feet a second in a 50 caliber long gun. I think that's really impressive. Now I'm just looking to clean it up a little bit because mesquite does burn a little dirty. Now I know that somebody is probably thinking, well, can I just go to, the store and buy a bag of mesquite charcoal? Sure, do it. But I don't know what it's going to do. I've never done it, and I really don't have a desire to do that just simply because I don't know if what you're buying as a charcoal source going to the store is all heartwood or if it's made with the sapwood also. See, I don't know that. Plus, I like to control my burning process. Okay? So, I have shied away from going to the store and buying a bag of mesquite charcoal because I want to be able to control all the processes along this step of making homemade black powder. Okay? Now, just to reiterate, mesquite by itself is a single source charcoal. I've got a target here with 8 shots, and I even wrote on the side of the plate, it's a little dirty, 7-shot average was 1915 with a spread of 57. But that's what that target looked like. Okay, then I took and I blended mesquite with, my mistake, I thought it was aspen, but it's actually narrow leaf cottonwood. And I even wrote on the target, it's a little cleaner. 6-shot average was 1849 with a spread of 58. So blending it with the narrow leaf cottonwood didn't do as good, and I didn't get the high velocities. So I am going to stay away from blending mesquite with narrow leaf cottonwood because the velocities dropped off quite a bit. Then I did that test in the previous video. Mesquite alder, 7-shot average 1953 with a spread of 98. But look at that target. It opened up quite a bit. I maintained the velocities and it was a little cleaner, yes. But it didn't group as well as mesquite by itself. Then I did a comparative test blending mesquite with mullein. 5-shot average 1960 with a spread of 37. And there was that target once again. So I'm going through a process of elimination in finding out which one of these charcoal sources blends the best with mesquite, because it appears to me that mesquite as a charcoal source is producing a lot of gas per cubic centimeter, and it appears to be producing more gas per cubic centimeter than Swiss, or even that Swiss that I remilled it and got rid of the graphite. Okay, it's not rocket science. It's a matter of common sense. Just like going back to this. Brass milled, lead tin milled. Look at the pieces left behind. There's not that much difference. The only difference is the color of the smoke. Brass milled, lead tin milled. Without the smoke being captured. They're just about identically clean. Alright, let's head on out and see what numbers we can capture now. First test will be the Mesquite with pistachio shell, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I actually spilled a little bit of this, but let's see what we get for the first shot. $18.95. There's the first patch. It's pretty clean. A little shredded, but it's pretty clean. But I would have expected that being the first shot. Get loaded up with shot number 2, and we'll see what it does. $18.63. Shot number 2, loaded up real easy. And in case anybody's interested, or in case you forget what I've mentioned before, every time I test a homemade black powder, unless I say otherwise, I'm using that same gunpowder in the lock. $19.69. Alright, let's see if I can find the patch, mark off the target, and get a couple more shots. I did have to take the front hood off, so I don't know if that really made a difference in the higher velocity or not, but it is what it is. 1930. Well, I found that patch. It's pretty clean. It's pretty clean. Cleaner than some of the other ones that I determined cleaned. But I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, if taking that front hood off is making the feet per second go up or not. But either way, I'm liking it. Looks like 1960. Not half bad. About like the previous one. Alright, let's get this last shot done, because that'll be 6. Be 6, and I'll throw out one of those other numbers that just really don't belong there, because with the numbers I'm getting now, with that front hood off, is what I've been getting already with Mesquite, so I'm wondering if those lower numbers just isn't picking up the patches, which my friend Broken Feather and I have surmised that that's probably what's been happening. What's that say? 1934. That's correct, 1934. And I found that 6th patch. You ain't gonna believe this. Holy cow. You talk about clean. You know, this is an old patch. Here's that 6th patch right here. It's about like all the others. I'm pretty impressed with it. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. But the target and the numbers may tell a different story. So I'm going to get the barrel swabbed out, clean up the lock. The lock doesn't look any different than any of the other homemade black powders that I've tested before. So we'll get it cleaned out, and then we'll just continue shooting. And at the end of this, I'm going to do one more shot when it's all done. What I'm going to do is, since I'm getting these high numbers like this with 80 grains by weight, I'm going to turn around and figure out just a little bit above the 70 grain mark, settle it, and see what that number is. Because I'm surmising with the 70 grain charge settled with this particular gunpowder, blended with mesquite, I'm thinking I might be able to get into the 1800s with only a 70 grain shot. 70 grain charge, but only time will tell, so stay tuned. Shot number 1, peanut shell mesquite. What is that, 1992? Yeah, it kind of looks like it. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, this patch number 1, yeah, it's got holes in it, tore up, but it's pretty clean, and I hit the bullseye. So for those patch conscious people, think about it. Shot number 2, loaded real easy. I would say probably the easiest thus far. $19.64. Well, here's patch number 2. And I would say it's still damp. I'm going to hold this aside till it dries off and then get a better look at it. Because while it's damp, I would say it's just a hair, maybe a smidgen dirtier than the pistachio shell. But like I said, it's still damp. $19.59. $19.16. Well, I found that patch pretty damn clean. Yeah, it's pretty clean. I don't even think I'm going to wait for the previous one to dry because this one tells a much better story. All right, let me get the last shot done, and then I'll figure out which one I want to do the 70 grain shot with. I have to say thus far, this is load number 5, and out of all the loading I've done, peanut shell overall has loaded the easiest and the smoothest charcoal sauce blended with mesquite. What's that, 1943? I'll have to go get a close-up. Well, there's that patch. It's clean for 5 shots, and like I just mentioned, it's the easiest loading charcoal sauce I've had blended with mesquite. And in the past, when I started first testing peanut shell, to myself in my notes, the cleanest burning gunpowder to date, blended with the mesquite. It appears it cleaned it up. It was easy loading, even shot number 2, all the way through shot number 5, and I maintained numbers above 1900. I'm going to take that one more shot with the peanut shell because the target for me is the determining factor. And at this point, I kind of want to see where shot number 7 is going to go with a lower grain charge. So let me get situated here, and we'll see what happens. I bet it was more fun for me than it was for you. First things first, that 70 grain shot settled 1777. So I didn't hit 1800, but I'm in the high 1700s. And I'll show you the target and the reason why I chose peanut shell. Okay, so the mesquite pistachio, the 6-shot average, because remember one of those shots was 1863 was the low. I eventually got that number out and redid it, but the 6-shot average is 1925 with a spread of 106, okay? Removing that lowest shot of 1863, the 5-shot average was 1937 with a spread of 74. So again, I don't know how much that hood caused that low shot, because I took off the hood at the second or third shot, whatever it was. And then it was after the second shot, and then my numbers got up into the 1900s. Okay, but I'm not all that pleased with the target. I've done better. So if I had to make a judgment right now based on pistachio shell, I would not blend it any further, just simply because the numbers and the target is showing a story. Okay, now how do we do with the Mesquite peanut shell? 5-shot average 1954 with a spread of 76. But who cares what that spread is when you group like that? And that includes that 7th shot at 1777. Again, nobody has been able to tell me what value the deviation is. Because at 30 feet with peanut shell, that doesn't amount to anything at all. 30 yards with pistachio, yeah, that's telling a little different story. Okay, now, just to reiterate what I showed earlier, Mesquite alder average was 1953 with a spread of 98. And you can see the story that that target tells. Mesquite mullen, 1960 for a 5-shot average, spread of 37. And there's that story. So if I was to compare that to peanut shell, I think we have 2 clear winners right there as far as blending it with Mesquite. And that was my intended purpose of blending Mesquite. As a single source charcoal, it did good, but it was a little dirty. And blending it with the mullen and the peanut shell, it shot real good, grouped real good, and it was a little bit cleaner. And let me get the patches just to show you real quick. Now I know the camera's not going to show as clear as I would like, or maybe it does. I won't know until I watch this. But the 3 patches on the bottom are the pistachio shell, and the 3 patches on top are the peanut shell. And looking from here, I can see that there is a difference between the peanut shell patches and the pistachio shell. And from my perspective, the peanut shell patches are a lot cleaner. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, they are cleaner. So my mind's made up between peanut shell and pistachio shell. It's definitely peanut shell. Again, that includes that 7th shot at 1777 feet per second. That's a good group. And the mullen was a definitely good group. So as far as those 4 gunpowders are concerned, I've narrowed it down to 2. And if you guys are interested, I've been giving this a little bit of thought that I want to retest these gunpowders just simply because I have enough to do it. But what I want to do is I want to test these through my Pieta 1860 Army with a 30 or a 35 grain charge, depending on which one is going to hold the most. Because I have 2 ways to do it. If I go with a 30 grain charge, I can use a felt wad between the powder charge and the round ball and stay consistent with that, or I can go to like a 35 grain charge, skip the felt wad and put lube over the ball to prevent any chain firings. So that's what I would like to do. I'm going to do it myself. Either way, I'm going to do it. But if you guys would like for me to record that, indicate so in the comment section. So, with all of this out of the way, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up and share it with your bestest of buds. And I have one more video that I definitely want to do. I'm going to wait till I get a good warm day to do it, because I need a warm day to show you what I would like to show you. Okay, so I'll wait for a good warm day and I'll get that recorded and we'll get that out of the way. And then in the meantime, let me know if you want to see me do some testing with my 1860 Pieta Army. All right, we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.